Yeah, that's snow. And are the markets going to cool off like it is out here in my neck of the woods this week? Find out in today's Sunday Setup.
Here we go, Sunday Setup. Let's jump in. We've got no time to waste. We got to get ready for December 15th, the week of December 15th. And let's start with the SPX. And we could see that we made a nice push here Wednesday, nice push Thursday following the Fed. But on Friday, we got some weakness that came into the SPX, and we could see that we did not take out its all-time high. That is still above us, and there's definitely a cluster of resistance in these areas. Your bears are going to be saying double top coming down, let's go, and that definitely can be on the table. We saw an uptick in bear volume here on Friday. At one point, we were down more than, let's measure this out, 84 points. And so there is a chance that we bleed lower, we grind lower this week, because you could see just here on the charts, we have a thin volume gap down here to this volume node at 675.6.23 to 6,756.23 cents. And let's see if it falls quickly through that. If we break below this 20 EMA on the daily, and that does line up there with that 50 SMA. So that possibly could happen this week. And again, we know that volatility comes into the markets post-Fed. So it would make sense for this to drop down, retest that area. You do have support here and then bounce out of there. And just coming in to take a look at the data, the things that we need to be aware of and why we could see some red early this week before getting some buying coming in. On Tuesday, there are two important data points we're paying attention to. That is going to be non-farm payrolls, which will come into play. And then we're also going to get the unemployment rate, which, if you remember back to Jerome Powell's press conference in September, that he was foreseeing an uptick in the unemployment rate to 4.8% in December. And so let's see if that happens. But the real big thing we want to pay attention to and watch for this week is on Thursday, and that is when we get CPI, and that is going to be inflation. And so we might see some selling come into play ahead of that report, and then based on where that is, we can continue the rally. So I would not be surprised that early this week we continue to sell down. Maybe we dip below that 50 down into the support on the VRVP, and then we start to push higher into an end of year rally. And just discussing sentiment for the market in terms of seasonality, Wednesday of this week typically is bearish, but next week is the strongest month in December for the bulls. So let's see how that all plays out. Let's just keep going here. Let's take a look at the Qs. Similar kind of a setup here. Double top, bang, higher high, lower high. And we're seeing a rotation out of tech. Same kind of concept here, but we are down to the 50 SMA, and you have the 50 EMA below it. Lots and lots of support here. This one looks like it wants to come lower, and we'll see if it wants to test the POC or test the 100 here. Big spike in bear volume on Friday, so more than likely we're going to see flows out of big tech, and if there's a continued rotation into small caps, IWM and the Dow Jones. Speaking of IWM, all-time highs this week. We just kept pushing up, and then finally we got some profit taking that came in here on Friday. Nice little volume spike, and this one needs to cool off. We're getting a little bit of profit taking, but we should continue to see rotation into small caps. And then the same thing with the Dow Jones Industrial. It made new all-time highs, got profit taking on Friday. We got a nice uptick in bearish volume, and what I'm watching here is this upward trend line resistance. Every time we've retested it, we got a pretty decent pullback. So let's see if this one wants to drive back up a bit. And then at that point, we come back down. That would be put it close to 500. And so basically what I'd be looking for is, let's say that the Dow continues to push up. Once it would hit the top of that resistance trend line and we would see a pullback or a dip, then maybe the flows would go back into the QQQ and big tech. So keeping an eye on that. Bitcoin is a turd. All it does is just, it's been choppy McChopperson here lately. And I have this trend line drawn as a support right now. It actually nearly tested it today, but still looking pretty weak. It is making a series of higher lows here, and they have to hold. If you start taking out these higher lows, then you're going to start invalidating that support structure, and there could be more weakness here and downside targets. If that happens, watching 77,000, 75,000, the Bitcoin just cannot get running. And every time that it gets above that 10-day exponential moving average and the 20, it is getting rejected. You can see all these upper wicks coming in here around that $94,000 mark. And even if it does get a strong push, you still have this resistance of the 50 here at 96,000. And again, you got the 100, you got the 200. So a lot of work for this thing to do. And the volume just has been weak here. There's really not a lot of movement here in the crypto space. So who knows if we're going to get it this week. Taking a look at TLT, this head and shoulders continues to play out perfectly. We have an abandoned baby bearish pattern here. And when these longer duration bonds sell off, people are looking at the shorter duration bonds. So we can see that the 10-year is ticking up, and that's not making mortgage brokers happy because those rates are staying somewhat elevated. So let's see if the 10-year wants to start to come back down. The dollar is dropping. So we're back down below the 100, which is good for stocks that take pressure off them. They can move higher if that is the case. And then we take a look at gold, which invalidated this double top structure because it broke above that. And we saw a pop on gold on Friday. Let's see if we continue to see inflows into this or if it's going to start to come back down. And then the mighty VIX, it spiked on Friday, dropped back down. It's hanging out here, but something tells me that the volatility is going to pick up here as the comments from the Fed are digested, as we get more Fed speakers, as we prepare for inflation. So keep an eye on the VIX. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out here on the broader markets is that the the S&P mini futures, we got a new contract that is coming in on Tuesday, the 16th. So be prepared. You're probably going to see this thing open with a gap and then sell down. That's typically what happens on a new contract. You could see the last time this happened was Tuesday, September 16th. So it opened with that big gap, sold down. So if you see a gapper whenever the futures open on Tuesday, you know why that is the case here on the futures. All right, so let's go jump into some of the broader indices here. So taking a look at Broadcom, it did pop off of its earnings report and things were looking pretty hopeful. If I come over here to the 4-hour, you could see that that thing spiked on earnings, looked like it was going to hold, and then bam, down it came. And you have a double top pattern here. It did close below its 50. You've got support down here at the POC and also at the 100 for a bounce. But you want to let this thing settle out before it does anything. I do like Broadcom. I did grab just a couple of shares here on the move down on Friday because I do think it's longer term potential solid. But look at this volume spike that came in. It's pretty beastly. And yes, that is a double top. Netflix continues to just do nothing, and every pop that it gets, it sells down. It tried to push on Friday, but finished in the red. Long upper wick here. And so it's probably going to take a little bit more time for this one to get going. You know, I'm not really doing anything with Netflix right now because it looks like it still has lower to go. Taking a look at Microsoft, it is back down below the 10-day exponential moving average, and there is a bearish Harami candle here. We have a bear candle closing inside this bullish candle with the 200 below us. And so what I'm looking to see is if we can create a little bit of a double bottom structure, retest that 200, bounce out of here, and then continue to push up. But it's going to have quite a bit of resistance overhead here with the 50, the 100, and then all of these volume nodes. But look for this one to come lower down into the 200 this week. And then Amazon continues to be a laggard and is just chopping along. You kind of have tweezer bottoms. It's not exact off of these two candles, one from December 9th and one from this past Friday. But this has to get moving. You can see there's quite a bit of activity right in this price range. So it's going to take something to bust it out of here because really it's just moving sideways. But to either direction, down below this 225 area, there's a little bit of support on the VRVP, but it could come lower down to the 200 EMA at 219. But to the upside, if it could really get a strong close above 230, you can see how thin this volume is here. up to 245. So just keep an eye on Amazon if they want to tap it and rotate out of something like Apple into it, because there could be a good opportunity there. And speaking of Apple, this thing just continues to push up, but it is getting a little weak. It's holding tight there to that 10-day exponential moving average, sandwiched in between the 20. But if this thing could take out that 20, which it tried to do here, it can come down to the 50. So I'm watching for a move lower on Apple. But the pattern it's been showing here lately is drop, pop, drop, pop, drop, pop. Can it continue to do that? There is a bit of a trend line here. If I draw it on my screen, let me show you what that looks like right here. So can it hold that structure and bounce out? Possibly. I still have a $300 profit target on this one, but it does need to cool off and tap one of the other Mag 7 into play. And then you have Google. It looks like it wants to come down and fill this gap at 303.99. It got very close on Friday, but that 20 saved it. Look for that to happen this week. Grab some liquidity and let's see if this can push. You do have some resistance here between 318 up to 323. And this one is extended. You could argue that this is a bull flag for the next leg higher, but I'm not touching it because it is very far extended to the upside. And look at this wild candle here on Meta. Look at this long upper wick. This almost looks like an error that TradingView has to correct, but bigger importance here, you have a death cross on the daily, the 50 dipping below the 100. This thing tried to push up, hit its head off of its 50, and has just bled down. It's sitting right on the point of control here. So this is a decision point for Meta. I was wrong about this stock this year. Hitting 1,000 doesn't look like that's going to happen. So what I'm watching for is to see this thing come down, test these volume nodes, and then see if it can bounce out of there. This is probably more of a 2026 story than it is a 2025 end of year rally. And then you have Tesla. Tesla, despite all of the weakness in the market on Friday, finished up $12. And remember, Tesla is seasonally strong in December, so this one could push. Let's watch for that $500 price target. I'm just going to put a line on here close to that, 500. And remember, Tesla does its own thing. It doesn't matter what the market's doing. This thing could rip, and you do have a nice base here on the VRVP for that. So keep an eye on Tesla. It could be a ripper come Monday. NVIDIA continues to sell down as the AI trade continues to cool off and the AI bubble talk intensifies. I would not be shocked or surprised to see this thing continue to drip lower into the end of the year. Let's see if it could test that 200 EMA or even get down here to the 200 SMA, which would then be a good opportunity to take this one long with a swing trade into the new year or maybe some options play. So I will watch NVIDIA, but I'm not going to do anything with it here in 2025. And then let's just take a look at a few other tickers here. Taking a look at MSTR. This thing is, again, it's so connected to Bitcoin that it's just doing nothing. And it is sitting right on this large volume node, point of control, and it is staring out over a cliff into the abyss. If it breaks this, and if it takes out the low of this candle right here, where a lot of buyers stepped in, you could see all the volume. If it takes out that 156.16 mark, this thing could drop fast and furious. In order for that to happen, you're going to need to see Bitcoin fall off of a cliff even further, which could. But the other part about MSTR is it has a lot of room to the upside if it ever decides to get going. And you can just see right here, this 50 is at 244. So the reward is there, but Bitcoin has to get moving. Taking a look at SMCI, if you just zoom out a bit here, you could see that it's been making a series of higher lows since last November, and it's got to continue to do that. If it would break down here and drop and start taking out these lows, then it's going to come lower. But again, sitting right there on the point of control, that large volume node, but below it, there is nothing holding it up. So it does look a little bit sketchy. ROKU is creating a bit of a megaphone pattern here. And with megaphones, those broad, wide bases, you know, this thing could really have some wild swings in price action. I'm waiting, and it's not happening yet, for a close above 108. That's what it's going to take. And if it could do that, I think that it can run to 140. So I continue to watch it, but it just couldn't hold on to its gains when it got back up into that price area. And that's been the story with ROKU for quite some time. Taking a look at Disney. Disney popped on news of a partnership with OpenAI with its Sora model, being able to use its characters. And you could see the nice push that it had. But then on Friday, poked its head above the 100 and it got rejected immediately. But check this out as well. We have a death cross here, the 50 down through the 200. So maybe that was just a little retest before a drop lower, like we've seen happen in the past. Right here, the last time we were at the 100. So let's see if Disney wants to come back down to this 101.88 area after that move on the OpenAI news. ULTA had that big gapper last week off earnings, and I said that it would trade inside of that candle. That's exactly what it did. So it looks like there's consolidation moving forward. We're going to have this gap that needs filled down here to 554.70, but that doesn't look like it's coming anytime soon. I would not be surprised to see some continuation higher out of this. UNH, last weekend we talked about how post-dividend, we typically get a sell down followed by a pop. And that held true for this week. Sell down, followed by a pop post-dividend. It did close slightly below that 50, so you have room up here to the 200. And the closest that it's got to that 200 was October 28th. It was somewhat close, not super close, but got rejected. So watch what happens when it interacts there with the 200. And then you have Robinhood continues to make lower highs. Selling came in the last 2 days, nearly at this point of, what is it, the point of control? But you can see that the volume starts to thin out, so it could drop a little bit more. Watch the low of this hammerish candle from November 21st. If it wants to come down and retest that, does it bounce there at 102.44, create a double bottom for a move higher? Or if it breaks through that, maybe it comes down and tests that 200, which would be a good opportunity to take that one long. I'm not going to go over SoundHound because I did a full video on that, but we are back down at that trend line. So keeping an eye on that. And then MU is going to be reporting earnings on Wednesday. Double top pattern. This thing is super extended to the upside. We did see an uptick in bear volume here, but you've had the AI trade really just get smoked on earnings this year. NVIDIA popped, but then dropped as they typically do on earnings. You had Oracle get crushed. You had Broadcom get crushed. So can MU, I know that they do the memory chips for AI, but can they change the narrative a bit? Will they report well? It's hard to see that when they're so extended because it looks like traders and investors are taking risk off the table off of these reports. So we could see something similar happen for MU. And then just a couple more here. Marathon Digital Holdings about to get another death cross. This thing can just not find its legs. You do have a bit of a double bottom here. We found a bounce in this area before, but it is crypto dependent, Bitcoin dependent, and Bitcoin is doing a whole lot of nothing. Palantir, it's in this range where it chopped for quite some time before it popped. Same thing here. I'm not touching this one until we get some more selling pressure in the AI space. It is still up there, but you do have a nice little swing trade opportunity that you could take here, but I'm not touching it. And you do have this gap to fill up here to 202.01. But again, I'm not messing with Palantir just yet. And then let's just take a look here at Rich Tech Robotics. This chart is interesting to me. It had a nice push this summer into October up to $7.43, dropped pretty hard, regained some footing here, but we could see that that 50 SMA is serving as the resistance right now. And it pushed on Thursday, rejected off that 50 again. So that is the line in the sand right now that the bulls are going to have to break. And you can see above that, there is thin volume this thing could run. So looking for a little lower here, test that 100, maybe even below it. And then let's see if this thing could rip on an end of year rally. So really quickly, let's just go check one more time. Bitcoin, what's happening here? We continue to sell down. We are down about 1,400 points. Remember, this could flip here in an instant. So the price action right now doesn't mean much of anything, but it is looking pretty shaky. And we'll have to see how futures open tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So there you have it, the Sunday setup for the week of, I got to check December 15th. I wish you an amazing trading week. I hope it is phenomenal for you. I'm looking for, this is the way that I'm playing it, I'm looking for some weakness earlier in the week as people wait for the inflation data. And then once that data comes out, that'll give us more direction. But keep in mind, next week is historically the strongest bullish week in the month of December. And We're going to need those 5 positive bullish days, the last 5 trading days of December, in order for the Santa Claus rally to be a possibility. So keep an eye on that. And as always, trade smart, trade intelligently, protect yourself, make sure you have a stop loss in place. Do not go beyond the risk in terms of what you can afford to lose, and trust your plan and have discipline. Don't be out there YOLOing unless you like losing money. And then to close, don't forget the New Year Wealth Accelerator class kicks off January 5th, 2026, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Come join me. Free class, 4 nights. I'm teaching the fundamentals of investing in swing trading. I would love for you to join me. And on the final night, I'm going to be paying one lucky winner $1,000 to fund their trading account, investing account. All you have to do is click the registration link in the description, sign up, and join me. And in the meantime, in between time, I will see you next week for the Sunday setup. Check out all the content coming this week on Courage Pays Better Than Fear Trading. Make it a great day. Honor the moment. And as always, be grateful. Have a great one, everyone.